Today I'm going to be giving my first recap on the college football Week 6 games. First off, Sam Houston, they're trying to get their first win of the season after an awful 0-4 start. They just couldn't pull out against New Mexico State despite it being close in the third quarter. West Virginia, they tried to pull off a big upset versus BYU, but BYU was just too good on the offense, and there was really no chance from the start for this upset. Western Kentucky keeping their playoff hope alive with that LSU game later this year being their most critical game if they don't lose another. Charlotte, a South Florida player, got injured in this game, one of their main players. I hope he is okay. But Charlotte, they just couldn't pull out in this game, and it ended up being 54-26, as you can see right there. New Mexico, they tried to pull out in this game, but one interception that led to a touchdown ended up being the dagger in this game, and they lost 28-35. San Diego State, is this a legit team? After that loss to Washington State a few weeks ago, Ohio State was trailing versus Minnesota 3-0 before they just outscored them to death, and Minnesota just couldn't get anything going. Miami and Florida State, this game was 28-3 going into the fourth quarter. Then Florida State scored 19 straight to make the final score look a lot closer than it was, just a 5-point win for Miami. Penn State, they had a good fight against Oklahoma, but Oklahoma didn't have John Mateer, and a lot of their players weren't playing because it's just Penn State, so sorry to that. Mississippi State, this was supposed to be your year, but you lose 9-31 after losing in overtime to Tennessee last week. I don't think Mississippi State's got it this year. UCLA with a huge upset over Penn State. Penn State has 0 good wins. That's their wins are over FIU, Villanova, and Nevada. So UCLA, congratulations. Florida, their head coach were on the hot seat, and they came back and beat Texas. Texas Tech, maybe a legit team. I don't know. I better see some more out of them. But they did beat Houston on the road. Cincinnati took care of business versus Iowa State. Iowa State just couldn't score enough, and it was pretty sad for the Cyclones. Michigan, they had a close game starting off, then at halftime it was pretty close, but ended up Michigan pulling out because Wisconsin is just not a good team. Boise State, they competed with Notre Dame, but Notre Dame did pull out in the end. Purdue, they had a good competition going into this game, but Illinois, they just were a much better team, and there was no Purdue magic like there was last year. Virginia, into this game, I thought this was going to be the game they lose, and then they lose a lot more. But no, Virginia, 2 defensive touchdowns. This Pitt, you do this every year midway through the season. Like, just hold out, beat the teams next week, and we'll see. Clemson, they just destroyed North Carolina in the first half. Baylor with a late comeback against Kansas State. I'm very happy for you, Baylor. Air Force, they just couldn't get to Navy. Pretty sad for you, Air Force. Army, UAB, they just couldn't do it. They're not a good team. Ball State, how did you beat Ohio? Wake Forest, they did get another win over Virginia Tech after the heartbreaking loss they should have won versus Georgia Tech. Temple got a good win over UTSA. NC State, a win over an FCS school. I don't even care. Western Michigan, they did struggle against UMass, but they did pull out in the end 21-3. Oklahoma State, no competition against Arizona. Sadly, it's just Arizona. Maryland, they had a 20-0 lead, and then they blew it. I'm so sad. I really wanted Maryland to get a win here. But ULM, they started off with a good start against Northwestern, but they couldn't pull out in the end, so I'm sorry for y'all. App State, they had a 17-0 start before they blew it and almost lost this game. But it wasn't enough because Oregon State just wasn't good enough to beat App State. Syracuse tried to spring a late comeback, which I didn't even see the score till just now, but they couldn't beat SMU in the end. Florida International, they just can't compete with anyone. A 51-10 loss to UConn. Like, what in the world? James Madison, Georgia State took them very far, but it ended up being 14-7. A really low-scoring game. Akron, I'm surprised that you got a win there. Like, that's actually pretty good. Eastern Michigan took Buffalo to overtime, but they went for the 2-point conversion and failed. Miami, Ohio. Northern Illinois had a great start. But Nebraska, Michigan State scored 3 straight touchdowns against Nebraska, but Nebraska just stepped up their game and won. Arkansas State with a late drive down the field to get a touchdown after a missed extra point from the Texas State kicker. I feel real bad for Texas State as this was a 1-point loss to a pretty bad Arkansas State team. Old Dominion is legit a 40-point win over Coastal Carolina. Like, this might be the real deal. I'm not kidding. UNLV took care of business against Wyoming. I watched this game right here, South Alabama at Troy. This is the game I watched. Had to know who would win in the lower state rivals. And it ended up being Troy in overtime. I was kind of happy about that. FAU, they got a win over Rice. That's a solid win for them. Rice, I thought you were a playoff contender, but maybe not. Like, come on, Colorado. UCF, they had a chance, but they couldn't beat Kansas. And a bad start for UCF in conference play. Tulsa, no chance against Memphis. Memphis looking legit. They're the first bowl-eligible team this year. Cal had such a good start just for Duke to just destroy them after that. Fresno State had a 20-3 lead before Nevada would score 2 straight touchdowns, but it wasn't enough for a win. So I hope you guys enjoyed. Like and subscribe. Turn on those notifications. I'll see you guys next time. Bye.